to Beautifully Jewish.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya, for having me.
So you're joining us today in Boston, but I want to sort of go back in time a little bit, if you will, and ask you what your life was like before October 7th.
Sure. I'll start off by saying I'm 37 years old. I have two daughters, Naomi and Noga. They're 8 and 3. And we all live with my partner, Yaniv and Give a time. And I grew up in Israel. When I was 10, I had moved with my family to Brazil. My father was a shaliach of this Jewish organization. So we just went there for a few years, and then I came back as a lone soldier
Mm.
to serve in the army. And ever since I've been, in Israel my whole life. And right after school, I started working for the tech industry in Israel. It's actually also connected to Brazil because thanks to my Portuguese, I started working my way into sales and localizing products to the Brazilian market. And this is how I started off. And then, in the last 10 years, I was just working for a venture capital firm, a European one. And then I took a major role in a company called Monday.com, a tech Israeli company that we took public in 2021. And just to say, I love my life. I felt I was really supporting the Israeli economy by growing strong companies. And then October 7th happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had you had a baby at that point, right?
Right. Noga was very young. Yes, she was.
Where were you? Were you in Israel on October 7th?
Yes, so it was, I'll remind you, it was the end of Sukkot, and we were traveling with friends. We went to the north of Israel, a very, very north area where you couldn't have been going to until very recently. And we decided to come back on Friday. We just love coming back and having a day to rest before going back to life. So we came on Friday. My family came in, my parents, my sisters, and we raised a glass for Sunday coming in and like all of us going back to work and school. And just after the Hagim, really, we were like celebrating. And then 6:29 a.m. Saturday morning, we hear the siren breaking. And, I'll never forget, I thought it was a false alarm. I was like, nothing is going on. It must just be something wrong with the alarm. It can't be a real thing. So, yeah, we went to the safe room, but I was like, this is probably nothing. And the next thing I'll never forget is my partner Yaniv standing next to our window in the kitchen, reading on Telegram, and then showing me a photo of a truck, a Jeep coming through the fence and telling me if this is not an AI thing, if it's a real photo,
Mhm.
then a war just started. And I remember like not understanding any of it. And then unfortunately the next hours were so bad for him. I think he'll never forget the images he saw on Telegram. There was one point and he told me, no matter what you do, don't go on Telegram. And yeah, and the next 3 days were probably the scariest days of my life. I really thought it was the end of the state of Israel. I know I'm not proud to say that today, but this is how I felt. We were sitting there hugging my daughters and thinking where to go, how to hide. I live on this very major street in Giva Time, and I was just, thinking but people were coming for us too. And we have a family from Kfar Aza, and it's just, if Israel is very small, so we all know of someone, and people were started looking for friends that went to the Nova party, and it was so scary. It was so scary. I remember thinking about my grandfather he's no longer with us. He had made Aliyah after the Holocaust, and just thinking whether this is how it felt for them. Like, I was like, what should we do? What do we do? This was so scary.
I
I could,
can't imagine all those feelings and seeing it in real time so I'm so far away and I remember going to bed. We have a sukkah, we hosted a family and I was just ending my 1 year of grieving for my father and I'm like, I'm finally done grieving, like I can be like no more Kaddish. I'm in a new stage of my life and I was just so happy. I love Sukkot. It's really one of my favorite, if not my favorite. And going to bed, I have my phone, like too many of us do, next to my bed and charging. And I see like the warnings, everything is just blowing up on my phone. And I'm like, that's weird. There's heavy rockets like because it's like 6 a.m. Like I'm seeing the rockets warning, but I'm just like, all right, I'm going to bed. Like it's always rockets. There's always rock. Yeah, I think I can't imagine what it was in real time. And I think certainly those feelings that this is an existential moment never went away. And I can't even imagine the feeling of being there and holding your babies and your partner being on Telegram. I mean, why is he on, how does that happen? How does that work? How does he find
So,
himself on Telegram?
so he's just like, we're all, we all know that before October 7th, there were a lot of things going on in Israel, and he's just very much into news, probably like you. So he's just, always connected, always reading, always first knowing of everything that is going on. And I don't think he ever thought he would pay such a big price, personal price for seeing things at first and without having anyone filter them for him. So this will be with us for forever, I guess. Like there are things, we're going to talk about my work in a few minutes, but it took him a long time before he could listen to anything I was going through, because it was like, I can't go back there. I see those photos, I see those images.
Mm.
And to your point about my babies, we were all like in that safe room for so many hours, and after 2 days I couldn't sleep anymore. Like my body was in such a nervous breakdown. The two of them were on me in one bed, and I was just holding them and freaking out, really freaking out. And Tanya, something I don't tell usually, after a few days I flew to Cyprus with my
Mm.
daughters and my mother. Um, and I started working on a plan on going to Brazil, rescue my family, pretend we're all Brazilians. And, I speak Portuguese. I have a friend there. She found an apartment for us. And it's only 5 days into Cyprus time that I started like relaxing, thinking again, and thinking, no, I don't have another home. And this is when I started also thinking, I go back home and I need to do something differently. Like, there's no way I'm just going to go back to work at Monday.com and pretend nothing happened to us. Like, this is a major shift in anything I knew about my reality, and I'm not going to pretend it's not. So it was like 180 degrees, from thinking I got to flee, like going back and saying, I need to do something to help the people that need to recover. And by the end of October 2023, I was already volunteering with the Kfar community, helping with everything, from mapping who was in the kibbutz on that day and not, because there was such a chaos, to start fundraising for projects and start programs for them and keeping people together. And by late December, I already, talked to my boss and told him that I had to go. I had to go and do something else for my country. He was very proud. But that's how it all happened. It was just like this real calling that came that, my father works for the Israeli state his whole life, and my grandfather made Aliyah, and I always felt that I had the luxury to choose what to do. And then until not, until that day that finally reality changed and I was called to do something else. So I'm on
And
duty.
so Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's like you sort of felt the trauma, right? The generational trauma of coming, like of what your ancestors had, but then you also could channel the action that your ancestors had and their ability to not be passive and not accept the reality and to show up for the Jewish people, for the state of Israel, and to do something different. And so, I mean, what you've done, I would love for you to tell everybody what it is that you've decided to do after you took a very long 5 days to heal yourself. I'm joking. And then you were able, after a few days of catching your own breath, to come build something so special and meaningful. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So it's first, as I said, I volunteered with one of the communities that was severely hit. And it was there where I started just, meeting with the people that had lost parents. It was first the young adults that I met with. They were all 21 and above. And we need to understand that in Israel, at the age of 21, you just finish your service in the army. And this is the time in life where you have to decide for so many things in your life. But for the government, those are no longer minors, and they were on their own. So, and they had lost their parents, and not only lost them, they had seen them murdered in front of their eyes, not able to to save them in any way. So they were also traumatized. And just talking to them, I had realized that this was so different than anything that had ever happened to anyone in Israel. Like the scale of people that lost their parents, went through trauma, and also lost their physical homes, that was like heartbreaking. And I felt that again, it's always a calling. I can't take any rationale on this, but it's just, I was like, I need to be here for those people. I need to help them build their life again. And this was then I was in this right at that time I was introduced to a group of volunteers that had started what we call the Israeli Children's Fund. And they had raised an initial money, and they were like, there are orphans, we need to help them, and we need someone professional to take over. And so, I went through this interview process, had this vision of how to do it, little did I know. And I just took on the job, and I started, it's just a year ago that I started, it was early March of 2024. It felt late in the war back then, but
Right.
again, little did we know. Back then, there were 404 orphans who had lost parents on October 7th on civilian circumstances. It's important to say that many, many others had lost their parents in the battlefield, as part of the IDF efforts. But I do want to say that this is a very different story, because when a father, and it's usually a father, goes to the battlefield and he does not return back home, their child has this ability to tell everyone and themselves that this was a hero, that their father died fighting and defending their country. The children of October 7th did not have that. They had to witness their parents being murdered in their homes, in their pajamas, in front of their eyes. And they don't have this coping mechanism of telling anyone or themselves, oh, those are heroes. No. So it's such a letdown moment, and it's a trust breaking moment from every bond in our lives. It's like home is not safe. Parents can't save us. We can't save them. Our country was not there. The IDF was so many letdowns, and losing their physical homes and their physical communities as well. So many of them, we have this CRM, and in every family you see more than just one loss. It's a father, it's a mother, but it's also a sister, it's a grandfather, it's a teacher, it's the best friends, and those people grew up together since they were born, because that's the reality of the south of Israel. So it was 404 children when I joined, and unfortunately today it's 477. We just recently included, of course, the Halomi and Idan children, and that's really heartbreaking because, again, they were alive for a long time. Um, and we just did not do a good job as a country bringing them back home. So I think that this is part of that, another layer of complexity. The situation is not over. Even for those families, it's all ongoing. They still have community members coming back to be buried. There's still so much instability in this, and this makes it all very hard. And this is what we're here for. We are here to make sure that every one of those children, whether they're 1 year old, 15, or 21, have a chance for a good life, good and fulfilling lives. We don't know what this means for them. We just know that they deserve that they had it all, and now we need to give it back to them because it was taken from them. So we have two main goals. The first one is to financially support them throughout their lives in all of the main milestones of life, and we've mapped them all by education, by therapy, and by just big celebrations and life milestones. And the second goal is just to be there for them professionally, because we all understand that money doesn't do it all. Money doesn't do it. And if we think about it, parental qualities, it's not just providing financially, it's also providing a good advice. It's also being there to ask the hard questions. And this is what some of them miss the most, just someone to talk to and take a good advice on where do I go study and what do I think about this lawyer? And all of a sudden they have to face so many realities that are not age appropriate and with no guidance.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, it's whole worlds, right? It's whole worlds, it's whole communities, and above all, that feeling of any sense of someone has your back, and so that you're able to be that someone is huge. And so how do you get in contact with the families? What's the relationship like? How do they get involved?
Sure. Just one more
Yeah.
addition before we go there. When we imagine those 477 children, I do want us to understand that they don't all come from the same background. So we do have people from kibbutzim, and that's one sort of a typical case. But another one would be the families from Ofakim and Sderot that come from a much lower economic, socioeconomic background. And many times the father that was killed on that day was the only provider of the family. And so we're not only dealing with a loss, we're dealing with a new life situation that requires new life skills,
Mm,
to the point that some of the widows had to have access to their bank accounts for the first times in their lives after October 7th.
mm,
And another group would be the Bedouin communities. We have over 70 children from Bedouin communities that had
mm,
lost both mothers and fathers, and that's a very different life reality. And finally, we have the Nova Party children that lost parents there on that day, and they come from all over Israel. And many
mm,
times their reality is harder or hard in a different way because they're not part of a community. So
mm,
when you are with a community, at least everyone understands some of the needs and someone else is thinking about how to cure it for them. But when you're just from Tel Aviv or from Rehovot or from Holon or anywhere in Israel, you're just one family in this reality. And then their work on getting everything they need in terms of, just get the community to care for them is harder. So it's just that we're not picturing one case, one reality. There are so many of them. And that's just without mentioning the different ages again, because a 5-year-old is now dealing with something very different than a 20 years old, right? So it's a very complex thing to build on. How do we curate for their needs and at the same time cluster them so that we can look at something from a higher level and understand what it is that we need to do. To your question on how we contact them, so there was a major effort in the beginning of the war, and again through the communities it was quite easy because when it's a kibbutz you can just contact one person and they know everyone else. And then we connected, of course, with the government and with Bituach Leumi, with the national security, call it.
mm,
Yes. And we just partner with everyone to make sure we have a full picture. I will say that last October, we had a campaign in Israel, and through that, a few families raised. And, again, the Nova Party was mainly the ones that are not listed in some of the places. And also I'll say that again, the Israeli government is very strict about the requirements and criteria, and many of the families that do not fall under that we still consider to be, they're still orphans, even though their parents were not married or they were divorced. Or so there
yeah.
are also many cases that were not covered by the government, and it took us some time to find them.
The last thing someone needs after this trauma is like the red tape and bureaucracy of way things are defined.
Exactly, Tanya. And too many times I heard them say, "You're the first phone call we get," and that was already June 2024. Or you were the first one to say we deserve we will get anything. And it's just, you're right. Like, to me, when I heard that, it was another heartbreak because not only they had to go through everything, they're being let down and again and again. And they, as I said before, they deserve everything. It's our role, it's our job as the Israeli society, as civic initiatives, to make sure they have a good chance for life. And I'll just also say that literature shows that they are now on the wrong side of statistics. They are all youth at risk. They all have like really, really bad predictions on where life should go. So we work very hard to make sure we get there now, yesterday. They don't have the time to wait for someone to understand that they are actually in need for something. And this is why we're here. People ask us, oh, and what if the government? Well, yeah, if the government comes in 5 years, I'm going to be ready to share all of the needs, all of our programs, all of the processes. But those children don't have the time to wait 5 years for someone to wake up and understand what they need. So that's what we're here for. And I have a team of social workers just working directly with the families. And when there's another social worker involved already for some reason, then we work through them. And that's the system we've built.
Beautiful. And so now you're at 477, and what are you trying to raise, and have you begun to implement programs and provide resources, and sort of where is the state, what's the state of things?
Sure. So first, I'll say that last year in 2024, we've distributed 4 million shekels in grants. We've built a whole grant process. Again, we've consulted a lot. We did a lot of research, and we just learned that it's just better to give money when people ask for it with a concrete need rather than just go out there and give money. And so we contacted the families and let them know that this is the list of things they can ask for. And again, it covers a lot. It comes from anything from a kindergarten to therapy. I'll say that the Israeli government does support conversational therapy, but many of them are not in a
Mhm.
state for that and would just need, to ride a horse or to do
Mhm.
something different, alternative, and that is not covered. So we covered that too. And then anything also from a bar mitzvah celebration. I learned this year that through celebrations, people recover, bringing people together for happiness, for just good reasons, make them heal. Because at first I wasn't sure what was the purpose of, celebrating all of a sudden, but that's their way to say we prevail, we're here,
Mm.
we're going to continue life beyond what happened. So we were very lucky and privileged to support parties too. We had
Beautiful.
4 weddings last year.
Oh,
And also needs like car purchases. In Israel, unfortunately, public transportation is not very good. And for many of them, reality changed in a way that now they're soldiers, but they also have to go home to the other side of Israel and support their young siblings, because that's reality now. So we just helped a lot of them purchase a car. And again, make sure that no one is taking an abuse of them in this process because they're all young and are not necessarily in a situation to purchase a car. And finally, I'm very proud to say that we supported 19 of them with scholarships for higher education. And, I take my hat off, as we say in Hebrew, for those people because I don't know how they found the ability to continue life and think about our future. And I'll also say that at least 4 of them did not have the intention to go and study last year until they heard about the scholarship.
wow.
And they were like, this is motivating me because I know I'm not alone in this. And then
I
they
want
went
to
and
cry
applied.
from that. That's like unbelievable.
I know.
I-
I was also very shocked, and I was like, I had those 4 people calling back, young adults, telling me, "Hey, you know what? Now that you say that, I'm going to apply. Let's do it." And that's beyond anything we could have asked for, being a driving force, not only a supporting force in their lives.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. Wow. That's really beyond. I mean, it's not just a Band-Aid. It's really allowing someone to envision a future they didn't even think was possible for themselves. That's what a gift.
exactly. And
What a
again,
gift.
not to put us down, but aside to that, there were just like basic needs, So someone was going on the army and their home was burnt, so they needed towels and they needed sheets, So we had all different needs and grants giving. And I'll just say that we have this very professional team sitting every 6 weeks, going through all of the grant requests, approving of them one by one, always making sure it's a real, it's a real need, it's a real person asking for it. We are very, very sensitive of the situation, and we understand it. We also already had some cases of people trying to take advantage of people. So it's all very, very professional. We need to raise another $20 million. I don't know if you remember me saying it when we met before, but I said we don't need more than that, but we also don't need a penny less. That's
Mhm.
the exact number we need. We have an actuarist, we have a projection for the next 20 years. We know when people are getting their bar mitzvahs and going to the army and again going to school. So it's kind of easy to predict needs as time goes by. And we just, this is the biggest aspiration I have. When I talk to the families, to the remaining parents or the guardians, because unfortunately some of them had lost both parents. Um, and I ask them, what do they need? So they tell me, we just need to know we're not going to be alone in 5 years' time, that you don't forget about us. Because right now, yes, everyone thinks about them, but they need to have a plan ahead. It's not enough to know that today there's a solution, and this is what we want to be for them. We want to be a stable partner for the next 20 years so that they can count on us. Um, so yes, we've raised very, very significant funds by now, but we are still requiring another 20 million.
I want to say that you said that the Israeli government or Israeli society hasn't done enough to bring the people back. And of course, I can't disagree with that, but I want to say it's a failing of the whole world. And, sitting here in America, it's like this we feel too much helplessness. We feel like we put posters everywhere. We show up, we go to rallies, we march, there's these Sunday groups that meet every week screaming, bring them home. Um, we've knit in our group these yellow ribbons. We've put them up. We're part of, there are women in Paris, in Melbourne, in Tel Aviv, on Rothschild Boulevard. Like there are people all over the world trying to like when I was growing up, you're too young, but I remember the American hostages in Iran. And I remember the yellow ribbon, and the most famous song in the whole world was Tie a Yellow Ribbon. It was the most famous song. Everybody knew this song. Everybody a certain age in America knows this song. And that it's not a universal concern. It's not just Israel's problem. It's the world's problem, and it should have been the world should have shared the outrage. The world should have demanded that they be released the minute this tragedy happened. And so, for us being in diaspora, like we can't stand to feel helpless. And so you're giving us a chance to feel we can do something. And many of us in our community, we bake, we knit, we do all these things. We stitch, we're always doing things with our hands. We have people who have donated to the knitting circles in the hotels for the evacuees. So we understand when you talk about different kinds of healing and different kinds of therapy, that it's not just talking, but it's being with others in community and using your body in a different kind of way. And so that really speaks to me. And for you to give us a way to find sponsors who can let us sit and do the things we love to do, to make things. I brought my little, this is what part of my Purim costume,
Oh,
it needs a little
did you
repair.
make it?
I made it. Yeah, it's crocheted, but
Oh,
I always do like a Frida, but for us, it's like, this is how we find joy Jewishly, but also feel we're doing something for other people. And so we're going to be sponsored. There are other people who do fundraisers in the knitting and craft world, and we're like, we want to do for the most vulnerable people, the people who really need our help. And we're just so excited to be able to have an opportunity to do something. We thank you, like you're giving us a chance to feel connected and to have focus and to have these stories and to think about the real people who will be helped in very concrete ways. And when my son moved to Israel, he doesn't live there, but he went to Israel last year. I was like, oh, he doesn't have pillows. Like, I know what you're saying about going to the army. It's like,
right.
there's all these little last minute, like, oh, I have to find a lady who's like a mom who could buy him pillows. Like, so I found like the lady who helps get towels and pillows and sheets and these things. Like when you need this, um, this is the last thing you want a child to feel worried about. And whether it's that or imagining university
Exactly.
and a bigger life.
Tanya, I relate to all of it. First, I'll say that at the worst days, and God forbid there were so many bad days over the last year, but at the worst days, my work was keeping me sane. I was the only one probably sleeping sometimes in Israel because I know what I do is so
Mm,
important. And there were some protest days where my friends stopped working and went on the streets, and I was like, the best thing I can do today is just keep on doing exactly what I'm doing because I'm so needed, and it's so important what we do. So I understand the idea of sense of control in this thing
mhm,
that is just sort of out of our control. And also I'll just say that we always tell them, and it's never, there's never a conversation without tears, because we can't bring their parents back home. We can't do anything to bring them back, but we can take some of the concerns and the worries
mhm,
and the mistakes, when you're not with a good guide, then you just lose your ways. So we can save some of those, and they appreciate it so much. And if there's one last thing I want to leave you with is that they actually appreciate it. And how can you just imagine for a moment those people that have gone through everything, just young mothers and also young fathers. Some of them lost their wives, There are a few families with like really just babies and a lone father there to learn what it's like for the first times in their lives. And as a mother, those are the hardest for me. Um, and yet they find a way to thank us and to be appreciative of everything they get. And so just when you sit there and you craft and you need, just know that they are so appreciative and they don't take it for granted. And it's nice to know that they still hold kindness in their hearts after everything that happened. And
Well,
thank you again for being with us. Thank you so much for wanting to help.
you're doing for us, like you're really doing for
We're in
us.
this
And
together.
I
We are in
know,
this together.
and I think, it's funny, it always puzzles me when people say, oh, there's these rifts between Israel and the diaspora. And I'm like, I feel no rift. I feel Israel's part of my body, and like what's happening to Israel's happening to me. And maybe I'm not physically there, but I feel it very, very closely. And I know a lot of our people do. So know that we are one, and we are supporting you and all the people that you are supporting, and applaud you for turning your trauma and pain into action and showing us how to do that. So thank you so much, Lior, for
Thank you.
speaking with me and for everything that you do. And I'm just looking forward to supporting your efforts.
Thank you so much.